So look, I was a bit of a wimp as a kid, alright? Honestly, like, a massive one. I'd be scared of, like, just about everything. Roller coasters, the dark, horror movies, those shitty masks that you get at the Royal Melbourne Show, which is, like, essentially like a carnival or whatever, but it's a specific annual one that comes to Melbourne. Anyway, what the hell am I talking about? I was also scared of creepy dolls, social interaction, death. Also, for some reason, that one random photo of my grandma that she had hung up on a wall at her house, because for whatever reason, it kind of felt like it could look into my very soul. But most of all, I was just scared of dumb things that didn't really make any sense. So let's talk about those things. So obviously, being a movie guy, I wanted to get at what movie scenes frightened me as a child, but I wanted to make it a little more interesting and guess probably more funny to my detriment by making those scenes not be from horror movies. So according to these rules, any of your Freddy Kruegers, Michael Myers, and Jason Voorhees are out of the picture. Those answers are too easy anyway. I don't remember what age I was, but at one point or another, I was freaking terrified of that one scene in Terminator 2 where the atomic bomb or nuke or whatever goes off and just obliterates a playground, like an entire goddamn playground. And like, look, probably the rest of the earth with it too, but like, it especially destroyed that playground, specifically. But looking at this scene now, it's actually just a really good scene and totally makes sense why I was scared of it, to be honest. The main part I remembered about this scene before rewatching it for this video was the fact that Sarah Connor's skin basically gets ripped apart and she turns to bone. And let's be honest, I just tried to say that she turns into a skeleton in like a less silly sounding way than she turns into a skeleton, but look, that's what goddamn happens. She turns into a skeleton, okay? So we start off the scene with Sarah Connor walking through the soft grass on the other side of a fence opposing a playground. A soft but unsettling tone of orchestra music plays mixed in with the sounds of children's laughter. And even from here, it's kind of a creepy scene. The whole thing comes off as really hazy too, as this is Sarah Connor's nightmare. Sarah Connor screams, trying to warn those in front of her of what's about to happen, trying desperately to save them. With no sound coming from her, it becomes clear that she's set apart from them all, playing on that common nightmare where you can't speak or you can't move, basically where you have no control. An allegory for Sarah Connor's position at this point in the film. Like, for years she's tried to warn those around her of the Terminator, though everyone passed her off as crazy. Soon enough though, the flash of a bomb goes off, the music intensifies and people begin to scream. The flames begin raising. Though slightly outdated, a haunting shot of Sarah Connor as she slowly burns is focused on before the wide shots of a sweeping impact, blowing buildings and trees away it comes on screen. Everything is heavily shadowed in harsh bright reds and oranges. Apocalyptic would be an accurate word. Shots of the playground quickly intersect as it disintegrates, just to really push the idea of just how horrible these shots of an entire city being blown away should be. The playground grounds it all, emphasizing that there are real people everywhere. And then of course comes the famous skeleton bit and Sarah Connor wakes up. I'm less embarrassed of being scared of this scene than I thought I'd be though, after rewatching it, so I guess that's a good thing. Next up is in form of superheroes, my favourite of which too. The first Spider-Man film is a classic. I grew up with it, I loved it. But the first time I saw it as a child, well, there were a few parts I didn't quite love as much as the rest. Mainly in the form of, well, to be honest, Willem Dafoe's face. It may have caused me to cry in cinemas. Hey, look, I was like 6. Give me a break. So anyway, we start off this absolutely terrifying scene with some comic book styled scientist talk in which Norman Osborn's scientist sidekick man basically begs him not to go through with testing their unfinished project. The arrogant Norman Osborn is desperate to get this thing off the ground though and is urgently running out of time. We get the idea that his invention is meant to be somewhat of a different version of Captain America's super soldier serum. That's a kind of a hard thing to say. But in the end, it's pretty much just some sort of like cartoony magical source for this guy to become a supervillain. Behind some super enthusiastic music making the whole thing really fun and some actual honest, if not a bit exaggerated performances throughout the beginning, what I really get a kick out of when it comes to this scene is the absolute lunacy. So Norman drinks his silly juice and away we go, and hops into his really just looking thing. This is all well and good, and obviously we assume something is about to go wrong. The music intensifies, Norman's sidekick guy starts to get super upset and frantic about trying to help him. Norman's eyes roll out the back of his head like a madman. He intensely shakes before passing out, and after a few moments of the other guy trying to help him out of the room, Norman's eyes widen like a fucking psycho, and this is the part where all kids all over the world really begin to cry, as he throws the man halfway across the room, presumably killing him, before jumping up, doing this very, very strange little crouching pose, and then he leaps off the screen, and it looks kind of ridiculous, but admittedly, it scared me a lot back in the day. But I mean, just look at his face, goddammit. I'm sorry, but it's entirely understandable why this made me cry. I almost want to cry right now. Now there's a few flashes of these throughout the series that are all pretty brief, and they were all just as uncharacteristically petrifying to my dumb idiot kid self as the last. But the main one I'm talking about here is the most extended kind of look at it. I mean, except for that entire movie that focused solely on the Weapon X program, but let's not talk about that right now. I'm talking about X-Men 2's flashback scene, as Logan/Wolverine/Huey Louis Jackman himself walks through the old Weapon X facility and sees a number of things to trigger damaging and painful memories. Now, initially the scene isn't really very scary, it's more dramatic than anything, and with an adult brain that's pretty damn obvious, but as a kid, I'm embarrassed to confess that these little flashes of X-rays and whatnot really got to me at the time. Mostly because they were so goddamn brief and mysterious, and also they just popped the fuck up like they were jump scares. Looking at this scene today, it really digs into the character's psyche in an interesting way, and honestly does have this darkly haunting idea behind it. We all know Wolverine as this tough badass, of course, but it's here where we actually see that he is a little flawed and best of all, scared. Now, of course, it's done in a more broody, tough guy way. It's not like he's just sitting in the corner crying, but still. As he explores the room, present day, he remembers all of these faint moments, and the thing that really does make them so haunting is because it's not fully explained to us. And then, of course, comes the best few brief shots of Logan's escape. He runs vulnerably naked, or at least in his underwear. It's hard to tell. I'm like, that's not really the point, you weirdo. The final shot of Logan looking at his freshly implemented claws covered in blood and screaming in terror is really what makes this scene, and we know here that this is where the superhero side of Wolverine was really born. Being kind of an odd kid, I never really liked kid stuff, childish movies. I don't know, Disney and whatever, they weren't my forte. Mostly because I was that dumb kid that thought he was too cool for that stuff, and it would be lame to like anything like that. So that being said, growing up, my favorite movie of all time was always The Terminator. But goddamn if this one scene wasn't always one to skip back in the day. Okay, so nowadays, the eye surgery scene in the first Terminator film doesn't look all that great. It's clearly not Arnold Schwarzenegger's real face going on throughout the scene after he's taken the eye out, and there's some fake stuff going on. But that being said, I do strongly appreciate the practical work behind it. The first Terminator is basically a horror movie. Hell, not even basically, it just straight up is one. A thing that many people tend to forget because of where the sequels went, but it's true. It's got the slow-following antagonist who doesn't really speak. Check. Though in form of guns rather than lots of stabbing and decapitating, well, it's got the violence. Check. And it's of course got the final girl who survives right up until the last scene to face off against our bad guy. It's a straight-up horror movie. But weirdly enough, as much as I refused to watch all things horror as a kid out of sheer fear, well, The Terminator was my favorite movie. So anyway, we start off this scene with the Terminator coming in with the intent on aiding himself. The atmosphere is dark and creepy, and the silence of the character brings this inhuman-like feeling to him, which is suitable obviously, as of course he's not a human. A light comes on and the Terminator sits down to examine a damaged arm. The Terminator must do something about it. And Jesus Christ, he just slices that damn thing right open with no hesitation. The scene ruthlessly doesn't hold back in terms of actually showing us what's going on too. There aren't like just quick flashes of it, it doesn't turn away, it's full on the camera for seconds on end. Nowadays, it's not the most convincing effect of all time, but I imagine back in the day, in 1984, this would have been downright sickening stuff. And then we get to the goddamn eye. And look, everyone has their thing, right? Everyone has an issue with some sort of painfully specific thing when it comes to injuries and whatnot in movies. Worst of all for me, and I don't think this is uncommon, but it's goddamn eyes. It's just such a sensitive part of the body, and it's just something that's never really meant to mess with, you know? Like, in any way ever, just don't goddamn do anything to anyone's eyeballs. And so in this scene, even today, as the Terminator slowly brings the scalpel right into his eye and we actually witness the impact, it's even still a little hard to look. Even with the outdated effects and even with the fake as hell looking Arnie effect, I can understand why I would have been uncomfortable seeing this as a kid. I guess as a kid I was scared of getting an operation or something, because here we go again with another one. And another Spider-Man one as well. So here we've got honestly a bit of a silly, cartoony as hell and fun scene, which basically shows us where Dr. Otto Octavius becomes the real Dr. Octopus. What a ridiculous sentence when you say it out loud. And what a convenient name. Regardless, after a science experiment goes wrong, we cut to an operative surgery of Doc Ock himself as he lays unconscious face down. Massive robot arms coming out of his back. All seems pretty normal. I mean, like, not really, because it's got massive robot arms coming out of his back, but still, nothing's like flying all over the room. Yet. We see that one of the robotic arms has unhinged itself from its harness in which the doctors have obviously placed it. For some reason, the lead surgeon sees this and just ignores it and goes right back to soaring. And then bam, he's hit by that very robotic arm. Not exactly a surprise, to be honest. He goes flying across the room and all hell breaks loose. Doctors start screaming, the other arms of Doc Ock start going haywire, and some of the lights go out, as well as a bunch of other equipment getting smashed in the process. And from here, I remember being super goddamn scared, and to be honest, nowadays, it's just a fantastically done scene showing the true nature of what kind of a villain Doc Ock can now be, and that he's truly a character to be afraid of. He throws surgeons across the room as they scream helplessly, and the shots of everything comes in waves of quick flashes and zooms. It's very comic booky, but it's also shot with clear seriousness, as we get a lot of creative shots playing with shadows and lighting and shaky cam. Now honestly, I remember this scene being more violent in terms of blood rather than just people getting thrown across the room, but I guess that's just memory tricks on my part and my dumb scared kid brain remembering slightly incorrectly. And now finally, the PC de resistance. Okay, I admit I don't really know how to say that very well, but here is that one stupid thing that I was most afraid of as a kid, movie-wise. And that is, as embarrassing as it is, Darth Maul's goddamn red face in The Phantom Menace. Legit, this face just haunted me. I don't even know why. I was scared of it before I even saw the actual movie. I couldn't even walk past posters because it was just such a goddamn scary face to me. I don't really know why though. Like, it's just a guy with like face paint on, and also he has like little horns. It's not all that special or different or scary while I'm looking back on it. But for one reason or another, this was just goddamn terrifying to me. But I always thought his double lightsaber was awesome, so I guess I got through it. So alright, some of that I guess is embarrassing, but mostly I actually totally do understand why I was scared of these certain scenes and stuff when I was a kid. I get it now, even if they aren't exactly terrifying nowadays. So let me know if you like this video and subscribe, do all that shit, that'd be nice. But most of all, let me know what dumb stuff you were scared of as a kid as well.